What's going to change? What's going to look like next 4 years?
Right. I think a lot will stay the same over the next 4 years. Obama's going to be faced with a Republican Congress, and so you're going to have issues of gridlock and issues of partisan bickering. But I do think that there's an opportunity here going forward. The different parties are going to be making decisions and designing strategies about whether they should try to work together or whether they're going to keep up the bickering.
Will this election provide a mandate to work together?
I think there's an opportunity, there's a possibility that the Democrats and Republicans can work together better than in the last 4 years, work together more than in the last 4 years. We're facing serious issues. We're facing this fiscal cliff that has to be dealt with right away. So the lawmakers are going to have to figure out some kind of compromise to deal with these looming issues that are coming up quickly. And then over the next 4 years, one of the big issues will be the implementation of Obamacare, of the Affordable Care Act. And so there's going to also be a lot of effort. Obama's going to have to put a lot of effort into that, into getting it implemented. And he's going to have to work with governors across the country on the implementation. So I think there's a possibility that people can work together. To get things done, they're going to have to work together because of divided government.
The other thing, I mean, with this, and I guess mandate is, you know, the popular vote is 50-50.
Right.
The electoral vote is certainly, you know, very, you know, a strong mandate, but the popular vote is much more narrow. What do you think that means for us going forward?
Yeah. The popular vote is evenly split, and it does suggest that citizens across the nation have different views of what our future should be. And at the same time, lots of American citizens are moderates, and so even though the parties have polarized in many ways, citizens themselves tend to be quite moderate, and they want to work together. But how that translates into what representatives do in Congress, what the senators do, what the president does, is yet to be seen.
The stat I saw was this is the Barack Obama was the first president since FDR to win a second term but have fewer electoral votes.
Right.
What do you think that means?
Right. I think it's a tough atmosphere for Obama. He obviously won the Electoral College. The popular vote is close, but he is ahead in it. So I think that he's going to be faced with a lot of challenges, a lot of pushback from Republicans, and he's going to have to use his bully pulpit and try to convince citizens, try to convince members of Congress to work together, to move ahead, to try to work constructively on issues of the economy, health care, the environment, women's issues. There's a whole range of really important issues on the table that Obama's going to be working on, and that he's going to need other folks to work with him.
Okay, what do you think in 2 years or 4 years from now, either with, you know, midterm elections or when he walks away 4 years from now, what do you think, what accomplishments, I won't ask you to say what are they going to look like, but what do you think, what issues will have had some major sort of legislation attached to them walking away 4 years?
I think that's hard to say, really. I mean, I think there needs to be more legislation dealing with the economy, getting jobs going, so there's probably going to be work in that area. The Health Care Act implementation is going to be huge, but there doesn't necessarily need to be more legislation there. It's just putting it into practice. How is it actually going to work? You know, global warming is a huge issue. We just saw Sandy. There's other issues, natural disasters that are occurring that makes climate change very real to us. And so that's an issue that maybe will be worked on in the next 4 years. But I think there's a lot of unknowns. One of the issues that I think about a lot is the Supreme Court, and we have Supreme Court justices who are getting older, so there's quite likely going to be the possibility that Obama will get to appoint another justice or 2 more justices, and so that could reshape the court and leave the longest lasting legacy for Obama.
Sure, I thought about that. Do you think that in 2 years there will be a higher approval of Congress? I mean, do you think there'll be positive change in that direction?
Yeah. Well, Congress has a very low approval rating right now. Citizens do not like Congress as a whole. Now, at the same time, citizens tend to re-elect their own member of Congress. So members of Congress get re-elected at really high rates. And so they tend to like their own member, but they don't like Congress as a whole. But I would predict that in 2 years, people are still going to be pretty unhappy with Congress.
Do you think it'll be the most? I mean, do you think the historic low levels we've seen, will they change with this Congress? I mean, do you think this election will be the impetus to get people to work together, or do you think it's just going to be the same gridlock?
I'd like to be hopeful that different groups can come together and work together in a productive way. I'm a little bit of a cynic on whether it's actually going to happen, because there's lots of incentives for the Republican Party not to work with the Democrats and to instead put roadblocks up. And at least in the House, Republicans were successful in putting roadblocks up, and they got reelected. And so they may not see it as in their best interest to try to work together with the Democrats. In the Senate, it may be a little bit of a different story. Senators have to appeal to a wider population. They have to appeal to citizens across their whole state, and so they can't quite be as narrowly focused, and so they might be more willing to compromise and to work together. So that maybe the Senate with the Democrats in control, but they may be able to work with at least some Republican senators to get some things done. But the House can still block it. And so with the American political system, with power very fragmented, you really need a president who can persuade the public, can persuade members of Congress to work together.
One more question that I can think of. As a political party, as much as power as you've given the Republicans in the House, do they become more powerful than Democratic president, or is it vice versa? I mean, would you rather be if you're a political party, would you rather have control of the presidency and neither House and Congress, or would you, what are your thoughts on how that works?
Right. Yeah, it's an interesting question about how power balances out in the American political system. But I think a political party would pick the presidency every time, because you have the bully pulpit, you have the ability to use the media, to try to influence the media, to reach out to voters. You have the ability to influence the bureaucracy. So a lot of what's going to happen with the Health Care Act, for example, is going to happen through the bureaucracy. And the president is the one who's going to be able to influence that. Now, the members of Congress can still have some influence, but it's heavily going to be driven by what the president can do by shaping how the policy is implemented. So if you're a political party and you had a choice between, holding the Congress or holding the presidency, you're going to want to hold the presidency.
Okay. Is there anything else you think is important?
The only other point I would make, or issue I would raise, is that the Senate will now have 20 women, I believe. And so that's a record number. I think it's incredible. Women are they make up more than 50% of the electorate, and they vote at higher rates than men. And so we are making progress. 20 is not 50%, but it's better than what it's been in the past.
Yeah, the number was 53%, right? Where voters were women.
Right, I believe so. So women vote, they're a higher percentage of the electorate to begin with, and then they vote at higher levels than men. They turn out at higher levels. So women can be a very powerful voting bloc. Now, they don't vote. They're not a monolithic group, so they don't vote all together, but certainly they tend to lean more Democratic. And that influenced the outcome last night, not only in those races that elected women, but also in the presidential race.
And put on your Republican Party hat on, what do you think, what kind of candidate do you think is going to do well in 2014, 2016? Do you think there will be a shift away from the Tea Party, or do you think it's going to be more partisan?
I think the Republicans are going to do a lot of soul searching over the next few months, and I think that it'll be a state by state kind of decision making. In some states, it makes sense to go with a Tea Party candidate. In other states, you know, Indiana, it clearly didn't make sense to go with a Tea Party candidate. And so there's going to be soul searching at the national level, but also state by state, the party officials are going to have to grapple with what the balance is and what direction they want to take the country. And of course, Latinos are a increasing group in the United States, and the Republican Party is going to have to figure out how they're going to approach issues that are important to Latinos. And that if Republicans don't figure that out, they are going to be a minority party.
Yeah, it's amazing how the numbers keep shifting away from, I think it was 90% or something like that of voters were white in the 80s, and now it's to lower 70s.
It's totally different, and that's just going to keep shifting, and just not only decreasing whites, but also multiracial voters that don't fit neatly in any one category. And so you're just going to see this real mixture of voters. And so the Republican Party is going to have to think very carefully about how they're going to reach out to Latinas, how they're going to reach out to African Americans and multiracial voters, and they're really going to have to do some soul searching on that, given the changing demographics in the country.